Welcome to another Friday seminar. Thank you so much for joining us today. And again, we have this privilege of taking some time out during our busy week to talk about what might be going on in our lives. And our theme for tonight has to do with learning about time, how your relationship with urgency, patience, or presence is changing or has changed. This is something that obviously is important for all of us. We are all creatures of time. And once again, for those who might be new to this program, this is a space, a judgment-free space, where we want people to share from their heart exactly what might be going on in their lives, so that we can listen and share accordingly. And so we are grateful that God has provided this time for us. And what I'll do, I think, is just start with myself. And I've been thinking actually quite a bit about this question, particularly because I had issues with my heart rhythm in 2023. And so naturally, when you're faced with a medical diagnosis or a medical intervention, you tend to think about time. And so I'm sure all of us have heard the familiar refrain, time is a commodity that once it's gone, you can never retrieve it, making it, of course, extremely valuable. And perhaps because I am getting older, I see the value of time much more clearly than I did in my earlier years. In my younger years, and I'm sure this is the case for so many of us, we take time for granted. When we're a child or when we're a teenager or a young adult, we are focused on accomplishing certain goals, objectives, and I had those same type of objectives even within ministry work. And a lot of times those objectives were associated with broadcasting deadlines. And so that in and of itself produced a sense of urgency as well. Someone has stated that broadcasting deadlines are a hungry animal. It's never satiated. But because of my medical situation, I really had to think a lot about this. And the idea of just taking one day at a time literally hit home. I knew what that meant with my head, but not really with my heart. And so, as we know, none of us have any guarantee that we have our next breath. All of that is in God's hands. And so this has changed the way I think of time each day. And I guess the way I sort of process this is that I have, of course, a to-do list of things that I would like to do in a given day. But if I don't get around to hitting those goals, I don't worry about that. I let that go because I realize that it's not worth it to be anxious over something that I can't really control, because what I am able to control, God has to give me the strength, the wisdom, whatever is necessary to do a particular task. And so it's not an excuse for laziness or slothfulness, but rather each morning I like to start off the day with prayer. And my wife and I do this on our morning walks. But even before then, I'm asking the Lord to work in me to will and to do of His good pleasure, as Philippians 2:13 tells us. And so, in light of that, if God thinks it's necessary for me to get an unexpected phone call or a visit or an email that warrants my attention, or if family members have something pressing that they need my help on, I let that take precedence over what I might put down on my to-do list. And in the process of all this, I'm learning that God's design for that day is always best. Not so much what I'm trying to do, but what He's trying to do through me. And I think that's important. And this also impinges on something else, and that is the whole idea of being content. And Paul talks, or God through Paul talks a lot about that in Philippians, particularly chapter 4, where he says that he's learned to be content in whatever situation he's in, whatever state he's in. And to me, that's actually quite liberating. It's very grounding because it means that regardless of how a day turns out, I can be content. I can be happy with that because I know that what God deems best is best. And a lot of times I try to put myself first, and that doesn't go well. It's always best to relinquish whatever we have, whether time or energies, resources, gifts, whatever we have. It's always better to relinquish that to the Lord and say, okay, Lord, what do you want me to do today? And to be content with that, really content, not just to say I'm content, but to actually be content, to feel that kind of contentment in my soul, in my heart, because it's under God's control anyway. And so that's something that I've been in the process of learning. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share regarding time, or how you deal with time or process time, or what you have learned in the past, or what you're learning now about time? Yes, Mark, go right ahead.
Okay. I don't really have a lot of answers.
I'm sorry, let me just interject real quickly. Just for the sake of those that are listening or watching, if somebody is speaking, please mute your mic, and I'll do the same thing. That way we have a good broadcast. I'm sorry, Mark.
That's okay. I don't really have a lot of answers or a lot to add to this because in my situations, right now, I'm in the process of learning something that I've never known my whole life. And I have so many irons in the fire. I don't even know what to do with this because of my nature, the way I've always been. And time seems like that's all I have right now. And I don't know what to do with it. And so it's not like I can say that, I don't even know what to do with it. I'm in a period right now where I know he's working and I know I'm downshifting. I'm downshifting hard and I don't know how to do it. And the anxiety through this, because it feels like slothfulness, because it's totally against everything. The way I've always been wired was not like this. And the ups and the downs of it. There's For the most part, I understand the work, but what I don't understand is why I can't comply. I don't understand that. It seems simple. It and I can have feelings of it, and then parts of the day I'm wound tight like a top again, and I don't know how it came on me again. And I don't so now I have to find things to do in my day because the fact of it too, because I'm by myself. I mean, normally I've always had somebody. I can go, or even family, I can go visit somebody or I can go do something, and that would use up some time. Now it's just me. It's just me and God. And I do what I can. I have a nice lake that we live on, and it has a hiking trail all the way around it. When I get too, when I get too wound up and don't know how I got here, I have to hit for that trail. That I just have to because that's all I know what to do from there, and it'll take a few hours to get back to there, but I'm glad that I have that. Um, and then there's even as far as my career, I have so many irons in the fire. I'm switching careers, and I have something started, but it's not coming before the other one falls, and the anxiety of that. And a lot of the time, I'm sitting most of the day in my thoughts, driving myself bananas. And a lot of it, my anger will show up, and then it's right there in your face. There's your anger. Okay, now you're revealing yourself. It's coming out. What are you going to do with it? And even at that point, I don't. Well, okay, what do I do with it? What do I do with it? I don't know what to do with this. So again, I have to go out and do something. So being on 5 acres, I can go find something to do. But even with my recent hip injury, I'm limited to that now. So even that's being taken. The physical things that I can do, I'm finding, and it's almost like okay, I'm just got to sit here and just sit. Be still. I'm trying to learn how to be still. I don't I don't know what that means, and that's where I'm headed. I know he's working stillness in me. Uh, surrender, stillness, but to be content in it, I struggle with it. I, and it'll take more work. It's got to take more work, and I just go through the highs and the lows. But I don't I don't have a confirmed solution on even how to go about it. So that's
You are able then to walk around the property
yeah.
with your hip the way it
Yeah, I
is?
can get up and walk, and I can actually do things. I can still do things. Like I've been in construction my whole life, and that's hard physical work all day. But I can only give that now maybe 3 to 4 hours. Then I can't, and I know that's my age catching up to me, and I'm not used to that either. I'm getting shocked about my age. I'm realizing my limitations of my age, and I'm having a real hard time with it because it just seems like just a few years ago I can go, and all of a sudden I just can't go. I and that's a tough, you know, realizing your limitations because of your age when you're so used to being physical. Uh, that's that's another tough one. It feels like all these things are coming at me now at one time, and but it does seem like they're all coming making the same point. They're all making the same point, and I don't understand. It sounds easy. Oh yeah, I'll just be still. Oh, I'll just read the word. I'll find comfort. I can do all that stuff. It's not so easy. It might be easy for some, but for me, I struggle hard with that. So
I don't think it's easy for anybody, frankly. Um, that's another topic. Oh, by the way, let me just interject here before I forget. we won't have a Friday seminar next week because we're going out of town for a week to visit family members. So next week there won't be a devotional, there won't be a Friday seminar, and there won't be the Sunday programming. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that out there before I forget. But I appreciate what you're saying, because it does impinge on the idea of being still and what that really means. And we really should do a topic. I've mentioned that before, because it is really profound. You know, when you're by yourself and it's just you and the Lord, how does that go? And, you know, that's something that we can definitely discuss. But I think it's also the fact that you talked about the anxiety and the anger that came as a result of that. Is that, do you think, stemming from the fact that you aren't able to do what you were able to do before? And so this is like a whole new reality, you could say, where God is like forcing you in this situation. And that I could see where that would lead to anxiety, that could lead to anger. I've struggled with anger myself. I've struggled with anxiety myself, so I know what that feels like. But it's interesting that, you know, that God has you in this space and going through all of this, and we know that it's not wasted, because what you are experiencing is going to help somebody else down the road. And I think that's the silver lining in the cloud, even though now it's not easy at all for you. And I couldn't see where it would be easy for anybody to go through what you're going through. It's definitely a trial, it's definitely challenging, but we know that out of this, God is going to do something in terms of your own growth and being able to help others as well. But it doesn't minimize the difficulty of it at all.
See, no, that's what it feels like, because I just been recently trying to be in alignment, trying to do everything I can to be in alignment, and I mean, you know, I changed the way I eat. I started exercising. I'm trying to be healthy enough to be in alignment, to be in the presence of God, and that now I'm finding out that God is with me. He's with me. Okay, so now what does that mean? What is okay? I don't know what that means. Uh, but that see being hardwired to the way I've always been, that's what brings the anger. It's my natural that's my natural self coming out. And I have to and I guess this is where the taming comes to, because I yeah, I don't know why. I all I can say is I think the anger and the anxiety is just coming out. That's who I am, and I got to shed it. It's got to get out. It's got to and he's showing me how at the same time, but it's still so confusing. It's confusing. I have, like I said, I have everything I need. I have it. I have everything I want right now. I have all those things. Finding out to do with my time, with my days right now. Boy, this one's got me. But what keeps me lifted is hope, because like you said, I don't know what that is, and I don't want to picture something in my mind. Okay, something's going to happen in the future, because that's what I'm trying to get away from. That's what I've always done anyways, my whole life. I've always pictured something, then went after it. Well, that's what I have to stop doing. But at the same time, I still know there's hope for something. I just don't know what it is. And by nature, I'm going to want to know what that is. I got to scratch at that to understand. Wait a minute, you got to show me what this is. And he's telling me, I'm not showing you. I'm not showing you. And that's where the not knowing is probably the biggest part of the anxiety, because I've always had a plan. Always. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do. I never knew you wander aimlessly through life. I just, so now I'm being, rewired. So,
Yeah, I think you hit upon a really good point, and that has to do with learning that He is with us, and that's something that we also, I think, have a tendency to take for granted. We have head knowledge about that, but when it comes down to, for example, in your situation where you are literally confined in a sense to be doing that, it's not like you can get out of that situation easily and do other things like you would normally do or have done in the course of your life. But here God has you in a special situation where He is perhaps showing you more of Himself and how He relates to you, how you relate to Him through the scriptures, through His word. And it's a way of unfolding more of Him to you. And I think that's a wonderful thing, even though it has its, of course, its challenges, because it's easy for me to say that, but I'm not in your shoes, and so I can only go by what you're telling me, and yet I know that because of the pain involved with this, that there's going to be growth, because whenever you can't have growth without pain, it just doesn't work that way. And so in a way it's a great blessing, but I don't think you might not see that right now. It's very difficult to see that because you're in a situation and it feels like the farthest thing from a blessing. And yet, you could almost say, well, this is a curse. This is like what happened to Job. He lost his children, he lost his health.
I spend a lot of time talking to myself like that. A lot of time.
Yeah.
That's where my mind goes. See, I'm not, most of my working career, I owned a business, construction business, and it was always something. There was always something. My time was filled all the time, even at home. Afterwards, when you own a business, your deadlines and all these things, there's always that. And to come right out of that, uh, I'm not good with gray areas. Even when I was a kid, everything to me is black and white. You got to have a start, you got to have a finish, you got to know it before you go. And man, this is all unraveling on me. I've got to understand what gray means. I guess it's not gray. It's weight. It's sit. But man, this is really, really, really something. Even when I try to come out and I think I'm doing it God's way, it was a while back ago when I built relationships back up with my kids, and I tried harder and thinking this is what God wants. I must be on the right path because this is reuniting me with relationships with my family, and that again ends up to me being acknowledgement to where sometimes what God takes away, and I try too hard to keep holding it. He's got to pry my fingers from things because I keep trying to hold it. So, you know, so even when I think I'm going in the right way, but it's the actual part of being still. So, that means be still. I try not to put myself out there. I put myself out there too much. Well, I didn't think it was too much. I thought it was normal, but I can look at it now at times and sit when I'm by myself. It is too much. You know why? How much better would you feel if you not interject yourself in into situations that you think you're helping? How much better would you feel? Well, actually, you'd feel a lot better. You know, because you're minding your business. You know, uh, it would be simpler. Things would be simpler. It's like I always need chaos in my life, and he's trying to take the chaos out of my life, and I'm just squeezing as tight as I can, holding on to every last bit of chaos that I can, by nature. So, uh, hopefully, through the end of this, you know, he'll turn this sorrow into dancing. So I don't know what that looks like either, but that's the only thing that can keep me from going overboard, I guess. You know, lost in myself.
I think that's really important because of the fact that you recognize that God has you in this situation. And I like what you said about there's going to be dancing, okay, in the end. And I think that's very important that you have that perspective, you have that hope, and the contrast between trying to grab things or lay hold on things as you expressed, and at the same time letting go of those things because God wants you to lay hold on him. Kind of like what Paul says in Philippians 3, that I may know him and the power of his resurrection and the fellowship of his sufferings. In that context, he makes the point, I haven't arrived yet, but I pursue after, that I might know even as God knows me. And I think that that's really, really important and significant because that's what he wants of all of us. He doesn't care about our time, our money, anything that we might offer to God. He wants our heart. He wants everything, 100%. And that's a big lesson right there, I think, for all of us, because we're all on that path in one way or the other. I think in your particular situation, it's a what's the word I'm looking for? It's highlighted because he has you in a specific situation. But I think the idea of, as you mentioned, the hope, and we have to realize that he is our hope. We don't have any other hope outside of the scriptures, outside of him. He is our hope. And so it's really kind of bringing that into focus, that he is our hope. The scriptures are our hope. And I think that's important to have that perspective, because I think with that perspective, it's easier to relinquish, or at least it makes it somewhat easier, not altogether, because if a person is not, God has to bring each of us to a point where we are willing to relinquish whatever it is that we're trying to hang on to, and realize that he is all we need. It's sort of like that passage in the Old Testament where it says, whom have I in heaven but thee, and there's none on earth that I desire beside thee. And that's something that I believe God is bringing all of us to, because that is the end goal. And again, that's something he's doing, but it's different with each believer because everybody's on a different journey and we're in different circumstances. Although there are similarities, there are crossovers that we go through. But I really appreciate you sharing all of this because it does help others that might be going through something similar. And I'm always, blown away by how God doesn't waste any of our experiences, but He repurposes them for somebody else. And to me, that is so awesome that He can do that. And He does that on a continual basis. We see that all throughout Scripture. We see that in our own lives. And so I really thank you for opening up about that and sharing that because it will be a blessing to others. And as you continue to grow and God continues His work of grace in your life, again, it's all for His honor and glory for sure. So thank you again, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank you
very much. Anyone else care to add anything? Mandy, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
Yeah, I had a few things to share. Listening to Mark, I just wanted to share something my doctor told me before she passed away with breast cancer, that a lot of people, she has different kinds of patients. One thrives on stress. They need the stress, they need the action, they need the go, 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 and they thrive on that. And then there's the other patients that they do not do well with stress. They get sick, they get tired. And so I guess it depends on your personality. I'm the one that doesn't do well with stress. But talking about time, I was thinking right away of Mark, not you, Mark, but Mark in the Bible. Mark 13, about verse 20. He has shortened the days because I don't feel like I have enough time. I'm the opposite of Mark. I feel like, where did the day go? Where did the time go? At the end of the day, my son and I always read the Bible and we look forward to that. That's our bedtime story. I mean, we just crave that. And lately it's just been squeezing and squeezing and we get less time and we eat dinner late and people come over, just like what Gunther, you were talking about, Gunther, about just, you never know what's going to happen. God's going to have a phone call, or somebody's going to come by and stay for 9 hours, or your daughter's going to call you and need to talk to you for 2.5 hours because she needs you, and you have to give up that yoga class, or you have to give up your whole day. And I think that's really good to put into perspective about what are we supposed to do on this earth. And Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of my brethren, you do it unto me. So when you get that phone call, when you get somebody coming over and they need that hug, or when somebody just needs a smile at the grocery store, like today, I saw a lot of people that looked really unhappy, and we kind of crashed into each other in the supermarket, right, with our carts, and they went, "Oh, I'm sorry." I went, "That's okay," and I big smile, and they were like, "Oh, somebody's nice." You never know what you're gonna do to give a little bit of love to this world that's so cold right now. For me, I tried to do lists, like I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, and then I would hardly check anything off, and I felt like, well, is this really a good thing to do to manage my time? And then I realized maybe I have time blindness. Like, where did the time go? It's already 1 o'clock in the afternoon and I didn't do anything that I needed to do because I was so focused on something else. So it's a good topic to talk about, because I think the most thing that I struggle with is, I mean, there'll always be a time of prayer where you know that it's just just go to your room or go wherever you need to go, a bathroom for me, because the bathroom was all the place that I could be alone with all my kids. But that's never a problem for me, is the time spent to just pray. But for me, it's just at the end of the day when I need to spend time reading the Bible with my son, that's getting more and more difficult. It's like there's so many, I need to manage my time better, I think. Because I always tell Aaron, I say, we need to seek first the kingdom of God, not last, seek last the kingdom of God, at the end of the day. It's good to do that before you go to bed, but I guess I'm just having time managing my time. That's kind of where I am right now, trying to figure out how to manage my time when there's so much. I just feel like the days are shortened, even though it's the longest days of the year right now in summer. I just feel like there must be a way to manage time better. I don't know. That's where I'm coming.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a great point. Time management is something that we all can use.
Yeah.
And you look at how Jesus operated, with his disciples. A lot of times they were going, ministering, and then Jesus told them, you know what, we need to back off, and they would retreat to a quiet place to get rest, because he realized the problem with burnout. And a lot of people are burned out with their jobs or relationships or situations that they might find themselves in. It's kind of funny when you said that about retreating to the bathroom. It reminded me of, and I forget who the wife of this particular preacher was, famous preacher, but they had a large family. And what the wife would do is she would put her apron over her head. Okay, she had a long apron. And so whenever the kids saw her with the apron over her head, they knew that mom was praying, and leave mom alone. So I thought that was really cute, how she did that and carved out that time, to just be with the Lord. But it is a true point. Time is so valuable, and yet, and I hear you, Lindy and I go through the same thing at the end of the day. Like, where did the day go? It's like we didn't get anything that we wanted to get done, because of this, that, and the other. But I think your perspective is so important. That daughter needs to be talked to for 2.5 hours. That other family member needs a hug. When those visitors come over for 9 hours, that's okay. That's what God, if God would tell us, look, you're going to get a phone call from your daughter, and it's going to be 2 hours today. You're going to get an unexpected visitor for 9 hours, and so needs a hug. Okay, this is coming your way today. But God doesn't do that. He just lets it unfold. But we have to take that from his hand, that this is what God has ordained for me today. And if this is what he has ordained for me today, then I'm going to be content in this situation. And I'm going to give this top priority, because it's becoming the priority. And I think, people are so important. And a lot of times this has to do with people. And again, this takes us right back to the first and second commandments. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So whether your neighbor is literally your neighbor next door, or someone in your family, or someone else, it doesn't matter. Everybody's our neighbor. And so how can we not love them? And you quoted that verse, which was very important. If you've done it to the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. And that's what the sheep did. The goats did not do that. oh, when did we see you hungry? Or when did we see you in prison? Or when did we see you naked and didn't do anything? And so then he delivers the verdict, depart from me, ye that work iniquity, in so many words. Okay, but it's the sheep that took the time to go to prison. And of course, there's spiritual imagery connected with all of this. It all has to do with giving the gospel, but also there's a practical side to it. If you see someone and it's in your power to give a homeless person food or this or a pair of shoes or whatever it might be, that's fine. Isn't that what Christ did when he was on earth? When he fed the 5,000 men, women, and children, did he discriminate like, oh, only the Christians get the bread? No one else gets it. We'll put the non-Christians on this side of the field and the Christians on that side. No, he didn't do that. He fed everybody. Okay. Because that is the demonstration of God's love for his creation. All right, now, and so that's interesting because that's how he operated, and so that tells us a lot about how we should operate as well. And thank you very much. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, one other thing is just to follow up on your at the end of the day, what I've been doing when I have been feeling like I didn't get everything done. A friend of mine just recently said, "Are you a Martha or are you a Mary?" If you're a Martha, you have your trouble about many things. You're worried and troubled. You have your anxiety. Or are you Mary, where you're sitting at Jesus' feet? And that's the most important. That God will always give us a new day, depending if it's His will. But that's why he says His mercies are new every morning. And I always wake up saying, "Thank you for another day of mercy. What can you teach me today?" So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you. Amen. That is really powerful because you're right. That example, I think what Mark was saying, he was just sitting, figuratively. That verse came to mind, and then I forgot about that, and then now you brought it up again. Because that's exactly what Mary did. She sat at Jesus' feet, heard his word, and Christ commended her. Even though obviously he loved both Martha as well as Mary, but he was making the point to Martha. And I think a lot of times, we shift between these two characters. It's easy to be anxious like a Martha and to be concerned about all kinds of stuff that's going on, like Mark was saying, the chaos around us. And we can devote ourselves to those pressing issues. And it's not necessarily that those are bad things. A lot of times those can be good things. But what is really best? The best is what Mary did. She sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. And a lot of times that's something that that the Lord has to work in us to see. I want what's best, just like in the transition from 1 Corinthians 12 to 1 Corinthians 13 says, I show you a better way. And of course, that better way is love. Exactly what we're talking about here. That better way is loving God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbor as ourself. And so thank you very much, Mandy. Appreciate those comments. Jim has a verse to share, Romans 10:28. Let's go there. Sorry, just getting this screen to work.
Gunther, there is no Romans 10:28.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that, Al. Did I read that wrong? Let's see. Oh, maybe Carrie means another verse in Romans 10, or maybe 8:28. Is that what you mean, Carrie? Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. Maybe you can help us with that. But he also says sometimes God takes us places we may not want to go, but it's to bring him glory. And he's quoting John 21:18. So let's go there temporarily. Actually, Al, do you have it there? Can you look that up, please? John 21:18.
Verily, verily, I say unto thee, when thou wast young, thou girdest thyself, and walkest whither thou wouldest. But when thou shalt be old, thou shalt stretch forth thy hands, and another shall gird thee, and carry thee whither thou wouldest not.
Thank you, Eileen. Appreciate that. And that's a great verse, Jim. Thank you so much for sharing that. And let us know about the Romans 10. Yes, go right ahead, Al.
Yeah, just to try and build, Gunther, on what Mark and Mandy were talking about. Until the last 4 months, I have had no time. And Tony and Eileen, excuse me, can attest to that. Even for me to get to the supermarket, they would have to come over and babysit Nancy for 3 or 4 hours, while I would go shopping. But suddenly, then all of a sudden, I hit this brick wall, and now for the last 4 months, I have nothing but time, and plenty of time to waste. But in that time, I take these examples from a very godly woman, my wife. We prayed together all the time. And in James 5:16, I think, it says, the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. And I just want to give an example to that. A friend of mine, his marriage has been terrible for years. For years. For at least 10, 15 years, they haven't eaten together. They haven't done the maritable thing together for years. And she was at the wake. You met her. And I have been praying and praying and praying that God would heal that marriage some way. And about 3 days ago, and I've been asking another friend to pray for her, another godly woman, and about, I'd say Tuesday, maybe this past Tuesday, she texted me and said her husband came into the kitchen and started chopping onions with her and mushrooms and was doing something with the chopped meat, and he hasn't done that in years. And today she texted me again and says, can you believe we're sitting together watching television? And I said, yeah, I can believe it. I can believe it. So even though maybe I don't have And thanks everybody for their prayers. I think I found the job. So nothing spectacular, just enough to get out of the house.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Thank you. I really got to get out of the house. To make a long story short, in this time, I've used that time for extra prayer time, like for praying for people and you know, so it's really, and unfortunately, you know, aside from the praying, I confessed my sins to a friend today. And, you know, I said, you know, I have a sin that bothers me. And unfortunately, with all this idle time on my hands, you know, I've been indulging, if there's lack of a better word, in this sin. It's not pornographical. It's not anything of that nature. It's not, you know, it's not something like that. It's, you know, it's a gambling habit. You know, in the old days, I never met a casino I didn't like. So, you know, like in these 4 months, I mean, I think I've been to the casino like 4 times. You know, I've even gone twice by myself. I mean, how depressing is that? You know, so unfortunately, even though I've used that time to pray more, I've also used that time to waste. You know, that's why, you know, I don't know. That's why I can agree with them that time is so precious, and you know, you can't waste a second of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And it really is, in a way, a two-edged sword, as you're describing. And as Mark also mentioned as well, what do we do with our time? You know, what do we do when no one's around, nobody's looking? What's going on with us during those times? That's another topic for another day. But it impinges on that as well, because all of this has to do with obviously our relationship with the Lord. And you know, there's that old adage. It says that how does it go? Uh, idle hands are the devil's workshop, you know, type of thing. But it's challenging because, you know, God has us in a particular place in our life, and there are opportunities, as Al said, for prayer, for Bible study, for reaching out to others. But then you have the other side of the coin, where sin can easily creep in for all of us. You know, it's only by God's mercy that He keeps us on the straight and narrow. Not that we're going to lose our salvation or anything. That has nothing to do with our salvation. That's was secured by Christ at the foundation of the world. All right, but it has to do with, you know, what is God doing in my life today? What's going on with me today? And you know, all of us are weak, and it's only by God's mercy, as Mandy pointed out, that we face each new day, and we realize His mercies are new every morning. His compassions, they fail not. And in spite of the fact that we live in a body that is bent towards sin, and only the Lord, you know, can, and the Lord does overcome many of our sins. And it's an ongoing process. It's never, it's the idea of refining the gold. You'll never refine the gold to the point where it's 100% gold. It will always be 99.999%. It's still going to be some little bit of dross in there. But that's okay, because, you know, God wants to get our attention, and He'll do so in a number of different ways, in a million different ways. God can do that, and because everything is under his control, and he can use everything in his power to do that. And we are just so grateful that God is a God of mercy. And I often think about that verse in Hebrews where it says that he was tempted as we are in all points, yet without sin. And so he knows exactly what it is that we're going through, what it is that we're struggling with. And he alone is the answer. He's the solution to everything. And so, I think about Peter, what he had to go through, and you can imagine him and his brashness, his bravado, I'll follow you anywhere, Lord. And then he denies him 3 times, or at one point, Jesus is saying something about going to the cross, and Peter says, no, that will never be, and Jesus responds, get behind me, Satan, because you are savoring the things of man and not of God. And then, of course, we have that reconciliation in John 21, where he's asking him the Lord is asking him 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, feed my sheep. And so you see the restoration there. But it was hard for Peter, and it's hard for us, because all of us, we need that shepherding. We need that restoration that God provides, when we go into those valleys. And all of us have been there one time or another, or going through it now. But it's all part of the journey. And thankfully, God is not finished with us yet. He who began a good work in you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. And so that's the hope. Yeah, go right ahead, Al.
Would you like a question, or you want to wait till Sunday? Because since we're on the topic of sin.
He's not going to be around Sunday, so got to do it now.
I think you're muted, Gunther.
Sorry, maybe wait till Sunday unless you think it's really appropriate right now. But either way, you can say it now. Go ahead.
No, it's just we were talking about sin, right?
Sure.
And so if we look at John 8:11, I was discussing this particular verse, and in John 8:11, and then in John 4, the woman at the well. So in John 8:11 it says, and she said to him, no man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Now, I was contemplating that for a long time, and I brought it up, and we were talking about it. And then we were looking at the woman at the well. Jesus said to her, go call your husband. And the woman said to him, I have no husband. And Jesus says, therein you spoke the truth. You've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband, and that you spoke truly. Then she runs and tells everybody, oh, come and see this guy that told me everything I did. Now, if she became saved, I don't know. Maybe she did. But how did she go back and not sin? Because she can't go back to any one of those 5 husbands, because the Bible said she's been defiled. She can't go back to husband number 5 because she's just had a boyfriend. She can't go back to husband number 4 because husband number 5 had relations with her, and so on and so forth backwards. So how do you accomplish go and sin no more?
Yeah, it's a good question as far as that goes. It's also Christ is trying to pinpoint different things with the two women. With the woman caught in adultery, the Pharisees and the Sadducees or whoever brought her publicly, and that's a big point, publicly, they brought her to him to say she was caught in adultery, in the very act of adultery. And Moses says we should stone her to death. And of course, very wisely, Christ writes on the ground. We're not sure what he wrote on the ground. Maybe they were the 10 Commandments. We don't know it precisely. But the statement he made, he that is without sin, let him cast the first stone, is like earth shattering. And sure enough, everybody from the oldest to the youngest, they immediately leave because they were really exhibiting what Romans 2 says, that if you judge someone else, point the finger at someone else, you're really pointing 4 fingers back at you. And that's why they could not stay there. And that's why Christ said to her, where are your accusers? And she goes, I have none. And he goes, neither do I accuse you. Go and sin no more. And so there it definitely seems that she was a child of God by that statement. But he's also giving, with that statement of mercy, he's also honing in on an important truth, and that is that the child of God doesn't want to live permanently in sin. God won't allow that. He will work that out of our lives. Now, as far as with the other woman, again, this is interesting because here we have a different context altogether. This is a Samaritan woman, and Christ goes out of his way purposefully to go to Samaria to meet this woman. And she didn't know what was coming, but he goes out of his way to go to Samaria because, keep in mind, the Samaritans were hated by the Jews. Hated. They wanted nothing to do with them. And so here Christ is going to what we would call an outcast, and specifically this outcast. And she was no different than anybody else. She had her particular sin, and that had to do with marriage and remarriage and divorce and remarriage. Everything that the Bible says she was doing wrong in that regard. But it's just like today, if someone has 5 divorces and apparently I don't know that it was necessarily a boyfriend. It sounds like another husband that she was living with, a 6th husband. Okay. But again, that would have to be checked out. But the fact is that what do you do if someone has 6 divorces? Well, you stay with that last one, number 6, and you don't go back to the others. And even though all of those other marriages after the first one were all wicked, and she shouldn't have done that because God doesn't believe, and God doesn't teach divorce. He doesn't allow for divorce. But she had to stay where she was at with that sixth husband. And so, and it, you know, we don't know for sure if she was saved or not, but she did do something very significant, and that is that she witnessed to the other people, to the other Samaritans, come, look and listen to this man who told me everything I did. Okay, does she say, is not this the Christ, the Messiah, or am I getting that confused with something else? So God at least opened her eyes to that. And so that is a possible indicator that she really was a child of God, because that's the nature of the child of God, is to want to tell others about the gospel. And so I think that's a possibility that, but again, more study would have to be done, going into Margoliouth and see how he translates that.
Yeah, verse 29, it says of John 4, come and see a man which told me all things that ever I did. Is not this the Christ?
Yeah, thank you for reading that. I appreciate that. And going back to Jim, it was Romans 8:28 that he was talking about, that is difficult to trust at times. In other words, do you have it right there, Al? Can you read Romans 8:28? Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Go ahead.
And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose.
Amen. Thank you very much. And thank you, Jim, for sharing that. It is true. A lot of times in the moment, we don't see what the end result is going to be, just like with Joseph, betrayed by his half brothers, sold into slavery, betrayed by Potiphar's wife, cast into prison, forgotten by the butler. Did that man have a lot of anger? Did he have resentment? It's hard to believe he didn't initially, but yet God worked that out of his life. God enabled him to see, as he said to his half brothers when he was reunited with them, you meant it for evil. He wasn't pulling any punches. He said the truth. You meant it for evil. You betrayed me. You sold me into slavery. You threw me in a pit and left me for dead, as it were, or made the impression to my father, who never got over it until he actually saw Joseph with his own eyes. Can you imagine doing that to their father? That they would lie like that for years. I mean, for how long? 20 years, I think. He was what, 17, and then he was 30, or is that right? He was 17, I think. 13 years. 13 years.
He was
lied.
39 when they came, 37 or 39 when they came to Egypt.
I thought he was 30.
Yeah, he was 30 when he became governor.
When he became governor.
Until 37 or 39 that his father found out the truth.
Okay, and so that's, what's that?
22 years.
22 years. Okay. 22 years they lied to their father. Terrible. That, poor Jacob and everything that he had to go through. It's like, why would anybody do that? It just seems inconceivable. But yet, this is our sin nature. We're no different than the half brothers. And Joseph, of course, was also a sinner as well, obviously, as we all are. But the point I'm trying to make is that he learned through the anger, through the resentment. You talk about waiting. Okay, waiting in prison, very difficult situation. But yet the end result is what Jim brought out, Romans 8:28. It all worked together for good, and that's really the bottom line. And we could say that about each of our lives. No matter what we're going through, no matter how challenging, how difficult it might be, God is aware of it, and God is using it to conform us to the image of his Son. And I think that's the take-home lesson with this whole idea of time. And a lot of time elapsed from when Joseph was 17 to when he saw his father and his brothers again. But yet, through that all, what does he say? God, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to save a great many people. And so it's always going to be some aspect of the gospel, some aspect having to do with life. And I think that's important to keep that in mind as we go through our own struggles, that God is going to not waste that heartache and crushing pain and having to sit with our emotions and if the anger, the resentment, whatever it might be, God is allowing us to do that so that ultimately he takes our eyes off of ourselves and puts it on him, puts it on his word. And so he's like redirecting our focus. He's redirecting our gaze to him, which is where it should be anyway. But that's not always the case, because we are sinners and we're very weak. And apart from him, there's nothing that we can do in and of ourselves. And so he puts us in a situation where we don't have an option but to do that. And so again, showing God's love, God's mercy in spite of ourselves. And so I think that's important for us to recognize. I don't know if anyone else has anything else they would like to add.
I just want to say, hi, Lindy. Nice to see you.
Wrong one.
There you go.
Hi, Al. Hi, Tony, Eileen. Hi, Mandy.
Nice to have you back on TV.
Oh, thank you. Had to find a spot in our house.
That's good.
Our son found it. Yeah, thank you.
Fine. You
I'm
found
glad,
the
glad you
time.
can join us.
Thank you. Found a little corner.
Okay. Well, if no one else has anything to add, why don't we call it quits? And again, Lord willing, we'll see you on Sunday. Remember, next week there will be no Friday seminar, no devotional, and no Sunday program. And I'll reiterate that on Sunday as well. But thank you again, everybody, and everyone that's watching or listening. We are so grateful for your participation as well. Thank you so much, and hope you all have a good rest of your week. We'll see you, Lord willing, on Sunday. Bye-bye now.